Could just take your seats, please. I'm trying to figure oh, wait, if it's recording. They can definitely hear me now. I have to bend over. Yeah, yeah. All right, guys, everybody, it's 5:30. We're gonna go ahead and get this thing going. If I could just have your quick attention, we're gonna get this meeting. This is an official commission meeting, so we are being recorded, and this is a technically official city business here. My name is Brandon Stevens. Tonight is February 5th, 2026. The time's 5:30. We're going to go ahead and get started again. My name's Brandon Stevens, and I'm not usually up here at the podium, and so I'm going to have to look down because I have to crouch so you can hear me. Sorry about that. I'm the chair of the Lacey Human Services Commission, so I just wanted to welcome everybody to the City Hall. And if there's anybody that wanted to speak during the public comment period, please go ahead and sign up over on our sign up sheet over here. In a moment, we are going to be holding our regional DEI-B meeting. And after that, we're going to take care of a few formalities. So first, I'm going to go ahead and make roll call here for our Human Services Commission. So if I could just get you to verbally announce your presence. I'm Brandon Stevens, present. Angelina Goldwell. Nancy Dila. And is Dahlia online yet? Does anybody see her logged in? Not yet. Okay, great. Tiffany Walker. Lester Dixon. And our youth council member, Jennifer Zhang. Thanks. We always start our meeting with our land acknowledgement. We, the city of Lacey, are on ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually tribe and Squaxin Island tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and their descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call to attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allow our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. We recommend that everybody in the community read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854. Just a real quick agenda item. We will have to approve our previous meeting minutes and our agenda for tonight and consent items. I do move for approval for tonight's agenda and the meeting minutes for January 8th. Do I have a second? Thank you, Angelina. If there's no objection, we will show that the agenda and minutes are approved. So if there's any objection, great, then I'm not hearing any objection, so we'll just go ahead and show that the agenda and meeting minutes are approved from January 8th. So since we don't have anybody, I believe, signed up for public comment tonight, great, so, or remotely, and it doesn't look like there is, so we're gonna go ahead and move into our regional DEI-B section tonight, diversity and equity, inclusion, and belonging meeting. And we have some speakers here tonight to fill us in on what's going on with their foundation or what they're currently working on. And tonight we do have, are we first with the United Way of Thurston County, our Thurston County Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed Household Report, AKA Alice. I have Chris Wells can come up and talk. Thanks, Chris.
Is this the clicker for the slides? So do I. All right, let me get a timer going here. Good evening. My name is Chris Wells. I'm the Executive Director at United Way of Thurston County, and I'm going to be presenting you with our most recent ALICE report, which we received in June of 2025. As you mentioned, ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. Sure did. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about why United Ways have been conducting this research study for the last 15 years and why it's important for all of us as we move about our daily business, as we architect our communities, as we design policies, why this is critical information for us to have and understand and incorporate into our work. This initiative, this research is our effort to accurately quantify poverty. For more than 60 years, the United States has used the federal poverty level as the means by which we calculate how many people in the United States and in any given community are poor. The FPL calculation is indexed to the cost of food. So it's the cost of food times the number of people in the household equals your FPL. In 2025, and it does not take geography and cost of living into consideration. It was an inaccurate measure when it was developed, and it continues to be a grossly inaccurate measure now. So FPL in 2026 for a family of four, no matter where you are in the country, is just over $30,000 a year. And every social safety net is tied to some multiplier of the FPL. For example, when you think about Medicaid and temporary assistance for needy families and SNAP and any kind of assistance that a family might require, typically, you would use, say, 200% of FPL or 80% or 60% of the area median income to qualify people for basic safety net programs. What we want to measure with Alice, as I said, are all of those households that exist well above the federal poverty level, but they still have incomes that are insufficient to meet their basic needs. And that is based on geography and cost of living and rationally calculating what basic household expenses are. So for example, in Thurston County, and which that's the example I always use because we're United Way of Thurston County, 33% of our households fall below the Alice threshold. Now that includes the number of households above the FPL and the total number of households below the FPL. So right now, and this is again, a report we got in 2025 that's looking back at a snapshot in time in 2023. So that 33%, if I were to estimate now, is probably closer in the current climate to 40%, 38 to 40%, if not greater, because of the significant economic stressors of the last couple of years. So a family of four in Thurston County with two children under the age of 5 has an Alice survival budget. That's a barest bones budget you can have and still basically make ends meet. But if you have a single unanticipated expense, it could derail the entire family. That's $116,000 a year. And as you can guess, that is an income that disqualifies you from any subsidies, pretty much of any kind. You're not going to get child care assistance. You're not going to get emergency rent assistance. You're not going to be able to have, you're not eligible for Medicaid. You're not getting food assistance, the whole 9 yards. You would think that a household with a family of four, now again, this is two children under the age of 5, so that budget would decrease once one child is 5 years old and goes into kindergarten and you don't have child care expense that's associated with them. You can go to the Alice website. I think I've got it here. Which one is this? Okay. You can go to the website that was on one of the earlier slides. It's unitedforalice.org/Washington. And there are all sorts of data tools and mapping tools that you can use to calculate the Alice survival budget for any number of configurations of households. And I'm going to show you some of the data regionally, if I can keep up with myself here and try to stay within my time. Move up on there. Okay. I already did that. So this is where I want to show you how we're divided by census districts, right? So that total 33% of households in Thurston County that fall below the Alice threshold, the highest number I think is in the city of Olympia, which is 44%. But you can see Lacey at 37%, Tumwater at 36%, Nisqually community at 49%. And Yelm, Rainier, Tenino, Bucota, and the Rochester Grand Mound districts. And then if we further disaggregate that data and look at particular populations, it's where it gets really eye-popping. Okay, Black households in Thurston County represent about 3.5% of the Thurston County population, and yet 36% of Black households fall below the Alice threshold. If we look at Hispanic households, again, about 11.5% of the total population, but 36% fall below the ALICE threshold. Single female-headed households with children. They're about 15 to 20% of the population, and yet 68% of those households fall below the ALICE threshold. If you're over 65, you're about 19% of the Thurston County population, and yet 42% of seniors are living below the ALICE threshold. If you're a young person, you're about 26 to 29% of the Thurston County population, and yet 55% of young people are living below the ALICE threshold. If you look at the total number of children living in households below the ALICE threshold, 44% of children in Thurston County are living in homes that are below the threshold. This is what the ALICE survival budget includes. Housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, technology. What we're calling technology is a basic cell phone plan, a basic smartphone plan, because that's now considered a utility. You should at least have a basic smartphone. But we also still have a significant number of households in Thurston County who don't have access to high-speed internet, right? So they have to go to a library or a public space and access high-speed internet. Here's a few configurations based on households. And these are already outdated. So if you take a look at a single adult, what you're saying is an annual income of $36,000 would be sufficient for an ALICE survival budget. Again, nothing unanticipated. But in my mind, that number's already risen significantly. Because, I'll back up just a little bit here. When we're looking at the previous ALICE report that we got in 2023, that was a snapshot looking back into 2021. We get the report every other year. In 2021, so I want to say that report, the 2023 report, we were at 31% of households below the ALICE threshold in Thurston County. But there was a lot that was hidden there and hidden from our view in terms of really understanding what the economic conditions were at the time. We were a year into the pandemic. We had massive assistance for rent and utilities. We had enhanced unemployment benefits for people who weren't able to work as a result of the pandemic. We had households with children who were receiving those $1,200 tax credit checks. And so we didn't really have any way of knowing how many households were artificially lifted above that ALICE threshold, that as soon as all of those pandemic-related supports were spent out, would crash back down below. What's interesting about the current report is that while we went from 31% to 33%, and that increased by 2%, there was still the last of that COVID era pandemic aid coursing through the economy, mostly in the form of childcare subsidies that reduced the expense to households for childcare and increased pay for childcare workers. And increased capacity for childcare. That was the last of that was expended in late 2023. So again, we see some artificial inflation or deflation, I would say, of the number of households that would truly be below that ALICE threshold because of the last of that pandemic aid. So now when we get our next report in 2027, we're going to be looking back to today or 2025 to see where we are. And the turbulence in the economy over the last couple of years has been absolutely devastating to people who are living on the edge. We have had that year, which I think was in 2023 or 2024, of 9% inflation. Now, inflation has slowed significantly. However, when it's still staying 3%, 3.5%, that means it's not rising as quickly as it did right after the pandemic, but those costs continue to rise. And in spite of the fact that we have had the most rapid wage growth in this country has ever seen since 2020, wages still have not been able to keep pace with the cost of living. Now you layer on tariffs and other economic instability, and everything is more expensive. So if you had a $36,000 income in 2023 and you have a $40,000 income in 2025, the value of your dollar is less than it was at $36,000 a year. So you can see. I want to talk now about the two biggest stressors on Alice households. One is housing, and then we're going to get to childcare in Thurston County. We all know we've got a housing crisis in Washington State. It's a national housing crisis that was really born in that crash of the 2000s, right? And in the 2000s, the United States was actually producing housing at a rate that would have prevented us from being here at the time. But because of all of that flooding of easy credit, all of that rapid development, and then the collapse of the whole system, housing development essentially came to a screeching halt as a result of that. So we're now 20 years behind on housing inventory, right? We're not producing that inventory at a rate that can keep pace with current demand and future projections. In Washington State last year, we got a report from Department of Commerce on housing needs today and our 20-year demand. We need 1.1 million new units of housing by 2045 in Washington State. Well, we need 54,000 of those units in Thurston County, and we're currently producing housing at roughly 50% of a pace to meet current demand. So we're nowhere close to meeting that housing demand. So there's going to continue to be this constrained supply, which will continue driving housing prices up. To complicate that further, we have to look at the Growth Management Act, our comprehensive plans, and our urban growth areas, and where we allow housing to be built and what kind of housing. There's a whole continuum of housing, and if there's a bottleneck anywhere in that continuum, the whole system kind of falls down. So, for example, when I say that continuum, you need rental housing, you need apartment complexes, but you also need workforce housing, you need starter homes, you need condominiums, townhomes, single-family homes, and rural homes, the whole 9 yards. Right now in Washington State and certainly in Thurston County, we are so focused on producing units of housing that all of the biggest housing projects that have taken place over the last few years are apartment complexes, which are going on the market at market rates. I have a daughter who's married and has 2 kids, and I recently had to buy a larger home and move her family in with mine because their dingy little 800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment was, the rent was increasing to $2,000 a month. And that's true. And as these newer apartments are going up, they're loaded with amenities, and that price is going to keep getting higher. The problem with that is, as we're seeing in Olympia, is the number of renters in Olympia now significantly outnumbers the number of people who own their home. And for better or worse, since World War II, home ownership has been the key to establishing generational wealth and financial security. So we are disenfranchising a whole generation from home ownership because we're concentrating on volume. And I hate to say I'm a lefty with all my heart, but Washington State is prohibitive when it comes to development and where you can put housing and what kind of housing you can create, right? So we have all this concentration on density, and when we look at our comprehensive plan, and where are we capping rural development rather than following trends of population growth in rural areas being around 12%, right? And not expanding the UGAs. I mean, we can do land swaps and things like that, but we are not going to be able to successfully build the 54,000 units of housing that we need in Thurston County because we're so restrictive. And rather than marrying and harmonizing the environmental impacts of residential development alongside the human needs that we see every day. One of the things that United Way does, somebody's going to have to tell me when I got to shut up. Let me see here. All right, we're good. One of the things we do at United Way is we work to support the county when they conduct the annual point-in-time census, the PIT. And this is the survey to assess the number of people who are unsheltered and unhoused in Thurston County. I think when I first moved here and took this job in 2017, I was looking at the most recent PIT report, and the number of respondents that were households with children was, I want to say, like 17%, which was a horrifying number to me. It was absolutely horrifying. How could that even be, right? In the 2025 PIT that was conducted a year ago, 43% of the respondents were households with children. 43%. We think of houselessness and homelessness as really a crisis around mental illness and substance use disorders, which it is, certainly, but it's simply unaffordable to live and work in Thurston County and around Washington State. We have an affordability crisis here that we need to address systemically because it is now this series of interconnected systems that are producing failure at greater and greater rates. So the other issue around developing housing outside of the UGAs and the Comp Plan and the Growth Management Act is the workforce. The skilled residential workforce has been shrinking by attrition for decades now, and we have not built a robust pipeline of new skilled trade workers into that workforce and into jobs that produce entrepreneurs who earn household and family supporting wages. One of our initiatives recently that we launched this last year, and it took 3 years to make it happen, was establishing a residential construction academy at SPSCC to start developing that workforce and getting them jobs. We've run 3 cohorts of that program now, and 90% of our graduates have graduated into jobs with starting wages between $23 and $30 an hour. Starting wages. So, we need to see that sort of program being replicated statewide and nationwide to build that skilled workforce up, which would solve, the volume, give you the human workforce you need to develop the volume of homes that you need, and then look from a policy perspective at how we manage growth in harmony with those projections and with the current human need that we see. And then, of course, there's the expense of buying a home and building a home, and how, the raw materials for building homes are radically more expensive than they used to be. Labor is very expensive because there's a labor shortage, and now, we're deporting a lot of the skilled labor who have kept that industry going as we see this attrition of those senior professionals moving out of that workforce. So there's this perfect storm of systemic elements that conspire to create this housing crisis that we're in. Not to mention the fact that, this generation can't afford a 20% down payment on a home. It's very difficult to get a mortgage when, the average price of a home in Thurston County is peaking towards, $600,000, $550,000. And you'll hear more from Aaron, who's coming up after me, to talk about, the financial issues that are plaguing, our populations and preventing people from being able to thrive. I want to talk also about childcare expense. I can say in Thurston County, childcare is prohibitive no matter where you are in the U.S. The Economic Policy Institute estimates that childcare should represent no more than 7% of your household income in order to be considered affordable. Absolutely not. If you are a family with 2 children under the age of 5 in Thurston County, Washington, you would have to spend about $3,000 a month to have your child in a year-round quality licensed care environment. Now that ties directly into our education outcomes. In Thurston County, there are roughly 16,000 children under the age of 5. Our total capacity for childcare in Thurston County for children under the age of 5 in licensed center-based facilities is about 8,000 children. Now, again, that's 8,000 children overall, but if you have an infant, the total capacity for infant care is 9% in Thurston County. Childcare as a business model does not work. It is an absolutely failed business model. And we don't treat childcare as the utility and infrastructure that it must be considered in the same way that we do K-12 education, right? And the result of that lack of access to quality childcare is that when you look at our WAKID scores, this is the index of kindergarten readiness indicators that every child should have achieved by the time they get started in kindergarten, right? About 50% of our kids do not enter kindergarten ready to learn, having met all of those milestones, right? So there's already a disadvantage there. If you look at our 3rd grade readers, about 50% of them are not reading on grade level. If you look at our FAFSA completion rates in the United States or in Washington State, we rank 47th in FAFSA completion. That's the free application for federal student aid, right? Which is the leading indicator of post-secondary enrollment and attainment. Half of our kids in Washington State don't even look at the FAFSA. They're not completing it. And furthermore, if we have students who are maybe interested in pursuing some post-secondary credential, they don't have access to the same financial aid that their college-bound peers do. So say you want to get into the Residential Construction Academy at SPSCC. Do you get a Pell Grant? You do not. Do you get Washington College Grant funds? No, you don't, because these are non-credit certificate training programs in high demand fields that aren't eligible. So you're disenfranchising students from the ability to earn some post-secondary credential, which, by the way, is incredibly important because some credential beyond high school, not a college degree, is the difference between $750,000 to $1 million in earnings over the course of your working life. So if you want to arrest that pipeline to poverty and struggle in Alice households, it is absolutely essential that we have quality care for children birth to 5, that's infrastructure, that is not for profit, that is considered as the same importance as that K-12 education and that post-secondary credential. So in the United States, we guarantee students a quality-free public education, but forever, it's always been about that K-12 piece. And I'm saying what we need to have is a system of education that includes those years from birth to 5, that readies children for that K-12 time and launches them onto a trajectory to get into some post-secondary credential or degree program. And that at least through that first post-secondary credential, that is the guarantee of that quality-free public education. Whew, how much time do I have left? All right, where were we? Did we talk about that? Yeah, we did. All right. Oh, this I particularly love. If you earn minimum wage and you work 40 hours a week, you will work from January through August to pay to the cost of your annual child care. And so what remains is what you have left to live on for the rest of the year. Child care is workforce development. Child care is economic development, because what you have when people can't afford quality child care is a system that keeps people who could work and earn income sufficient to support their families out of the workforce. So they're either unemployed or underemployed. And one of the difficult decisions that Alice households have to make is whether or not they can afford to work. Now, I know people who are my peers who have 2 full-time earners in their homes, professionals, and who have had one parent, mostly women, make the decision to opt out of their career for that 5-year period because it's too expensive. And, you know, there are people in Washington state now, particularly like around Seattle, who have to be on a waiting list for years before they even have a child to ensure that when they do have a child, they will have a place to put their child for quality year-round care. I'm trying to wrap this up real quick. The number of households that are housing cost burdened or severely housing cost burdened in Thurston County. 32% of all households in Thurston County, 32%, fully 1/3, are considered cost burden, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income just on housing costs alone. 15% are severely cost burdened, which means they spend more than 50% of their income on their housing expense. I'm going to skip the graph, skip the graph. There you go. All right. And I got 6 minutes for questions. Oh, thank you. Do we have any questions? Nothing. I covered it all.
I'm a realtor. And so I see a lot of this firsthand, and then I've also lived a lot of the experiences that you're talking about. Specifically, I have 2 kids. My wife stayed home the first 5 years because as I was starting my own business, we needed to make a decision on how we could afford to have a kid. And so, I mean, it was kind of a gift and a curse because, you know, my wife got to bond with our younger son a little bit more. But another thing is that you kind of touched on is the cost of housing, building and permitting and all that stuff. All those things are just as high as the cost of labor and materials, and all those things get passed right down to the consumer. The builders who are actually trying to make housing more affordable because they're able to offer financing options that do make it a little bit more affordable than if you were to just, because they can reduce interest rates and those types of things. But the permitting and the red tape and the things you have to go through with the local municipalities is the one thing I hear from even people that are just trying to build, not major, corporate builders. And they just pass those costs right down to us.
Well, to your point, the estimate, depending on the type of housing, is that before you can even put a shovel in the ground, it's going to cost you $60,000 to $100,000, and that's all in permitting and all of the fees and impact fees and infrastructure fees and all of the rest of that.
And it doesn't even include the how long it takes.
Right.
Right. And if you're talking about we're up against time constraints specifically on how many units we can build to meet the demand, it certainly needs to be addressed. But then again, like you said, there's a perfect storm of like all these things going on at once, and how we can get over that hump. I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's being in rooms like this where, when I talked earlier about being an architect of our community, when our legislators get all of this data in a tapestry, what we have right now is all of these disparate systems who are working in their little silos, and no one who assembles all of this information and delivers it in a way that is comprehensive and understands that every part of those interconnected systems has a role in this. Another policy priority should be how many units of housing, when we're in a housing crisis, should we allow to be purchased and put into investor portfolios? Goldman Sachs is the largest homeowner in the United States,
Facts.
and they are snapping up residential real estate that people who live here can't compete with. They come in with cash offers, they close in a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. And right now, 20 to 25% of our residential real estate inventory is going into those investment portfolios.
I don't want to hijack the microphone, but yeah, like even they're building whole rental communities.
Yep.
And the state, I think, is trying to make it so that there has to be a percentage that are low income, but at the same time, when corporations buy housing developments, especially ones for rent, they're able to set the market value for one, the rent, and then they're also able to dictate the price sale later based on the fact that they've already made their profit on that. And then so they're really controlling not only just the market rents, but also the home values.
Yep.
And I've personally had to put in offers for people that compete against, BlackRock institutions and those types of things, or Zillow, whoever it was at the time.
Well, any of us who go to buy a home in Thurston County are going to be competing with investors. That's just flat out.
I just want to ask folks to please, if you're going to speak into the microphone so that we can have it on the recording and that anybody listening can hear it. So I'll be coming around with mics.
Thank you, Chris, for that excellent presentation. I'm Thelma Jackson, Chair of the Lacey Equity Commission. My question after hearing this plethora of data is, what must we do differently if we want different outcomes given this condition we find ourselves in?
Well, this is systems change and policy change. I mean, some things are, like we're running a companion bills in the House and Senate right now to expand eligibility for Washington College grant funds to students who are pursuing non-credit certificate training programs in high demand sectors that pay household and family supporting wages. So there's any number of programs, including our Residential Construction Academy, which we can't fund in perpetuity. We can't scholarship all of these kids. And if we're going to scale it up and build a statewide workforce, they should be able to get student financial aid. Last year, the bill died in appropriations because there's a big fat fiscal note put on it. We got the fiscal note taken off this year, and I'm proud to say that as of yesterday, I want to say, but I can't be sure because all the days kind of run together, it has now made it through the higher ed and workforce development committees in both the House and the Senate. So now it's going to appropriations and ways and means. And then if we can get it out of ways and means and appropriations, which we should because there's no fiscal note on it, then we can get it to the floor for discussion and voting. So, I wish I had written down the bill numbers for you because I'd also have you all go and weigh in with your legislators to pass that. Ah, there we go. But that's a systems change. And, other systems changes would require us to look at the Growth Management Act, to look at our municipal and county comprehensive plans, to look at our urban growth areas, and to examine the unintentional failures of those plans to provide us with the policy we need to advance the causes that we care about. With childcare and early education, that's activism. That's working with policy people. That's piloting programs that offer, universal quality year-round childcare as part of our infrastructure and our investment in workforce development and economic growth. And in the investment of the future of those students. We're on a bad path if we aren't looking at these two things in a systems way. So, there's any number of ways that we can investigate and query the data and the systems to then convene as a community and advance a shared agenda. But it is going to happen through our local and county and state elected officials. And at the federal level, we're doing the same advocacy for the Pell Grant that we're doing for the Washington College Grant, because that will help every student in the country.
One more thing, sorry. I do agree that access to those programs is probably going to be the number one thing. The other thing I would add is, because I work with a lot of contractors throughout our city, the one, it used to be an apprenticeship is how people would go through. And what I hear from a lot of contractors now, they have a really big stigma on kids. They don't want to work. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that anymore. And then they invest all this time, they say, and then they just decide they don't want to do it anymore. So I think if we gave them access to be trained already, and then they could come in and know that they like this job, and then the employers would have more confidence, I believe.
Well, I mean, if you're a student these days, or if you're, under the age of 25, there's a lot of hopelessness and despair. That, even for those of us who came up in struggle, there was struggle and opportunity, and available to us in ways that it's just not true for younger people today. It's just not true. This lie we tell ourselves about being able to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and, if you put your back into it and you got grit and determination, that's everything you need. It's a lie. That's not true. We have failing systems. And so we got to stop telling the lie. We got to start calling out the truth. And then we have to start coordinating our efforts as a community on shared priorities and shared North Star goals that we can advance as people united. Okay.
Hi, I have a question, and this might be a silly one, but I'm going to ask it anyways. A lot of folks that I'm talking to are curious about how a state income tax could support funding programs that help people live lives and have childcare and buy houses. So I'm newer to the area just in the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm curious, it seems like, I know it would not be an easy solution, but are there conversations within like municipalities and groups to talk about like proposing an income tax again, because lower earning families are paying more in tax than
So
rich.
I know that that's being discussed now. It comes up all the time here, and people panic, and I think rightfully so. We do have a pretty regressive tax system in Washington State. And one of the things that I propose to people who are going to consider, our electeds who are going to consider and pass comprehensive plans, is that every single one of our municipalities has massive budget deficits right now. Thurston County, massive budget deficits right now. They're cutting services, they're laying off city and county employees, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to close these gaps. And what I'm telling them when I'm sitting down with them in meetings one-to-one is, you're killing yourself. You're doing this to yourself, because what happens when you have a comprehensive plan that permits thoughtful, responsible residential development and the resulting commercial development that comes out of that? Where do you think these tax dollars come from? So, if you are so prohibitive in terms of development, you exhaust the tax base you have, you price people out of your communities, and you've done no consideration for what that development looks like over 20 years and the revenue that that development produces, which allows you to continue providing services to your constituents rather than trying to choke them. I'll say one more thing. thing that might get me some booze. But when Prop 1 was initially proposed for City of Olympia to raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour, I almost blew a gasket. Right? We don't have any huge employers in Thurston County. Thurston County's economy is driven by small businesses. And I mean small family-owned businesses that create the character and the quality of life in this community. And if we are going to, the argument I made at the time is that we don't have a minimum wage problem. We have an affordability problem, and you're using the wrong policy lever to solve something that's so much more complicated than that. If we raise minimum wages to $20 to $25, the total number of Olympia employees who work and live in the city of Olympia is less than 1,000 people. But you've created an economic cascading impact across the entire region by taking that step, and you will actually make life more unaffordable and more difficult for the people you're saying you're trying to help, right? You got to think about this stuff. But we're so reflexive, and to a great degree, we're not literate in all of these systems, And so we have to get literate in all of these systems and how they work together, and to understand what we really need to be doing over the next 20 years to make people's lives better and to have communities where all people can thrive.
One last question. So I know from my experience, my name is Kelly. I'm from City of Tumwater. One thing that I experienced when I was a single mother was all of my insurance rates shot through the roof. And when I asked the insurance companies, why did this happen? They said, well, because you're a single mother. And that really shocked me in 2018. That really shocked me. And so I kind of wonder, what power do we have and what policies can we promote, or who do we contact about the exorbitant rates of insurance?
I would be up here for like 9 more days to answer that question, and I don't have that time. But I will say, part of the issue and what many people don't understand is how much insurers influence our policies around healthcare, right? I used to be in, I want to say in the healthcare industry, and then I was a director of development for an inpatient psychiatric facility, right? And my job was to negotiate every single day with every single insurer to keep those patients who needed to be in the hospital in the hospital. And it was like going to war. I had to strap up every single day and go to the mat for every patient who had insurance who was in the hospital. I'm talking about people who are suicidal, people who are homicidal, people who'd already harmed themselves. I had a guy brought in by a SWAT team for holding his parents hostage in a garage because he was psychotic, and I had to fight with his insurance company to get them pay, and they made me report back to them every single day, right? That whole system is corrupt. Healthcare is infrastructure, right? So how do we go about that? How do we make it better? It's understanding how the system works and then getting at the guts of it, and then finding ourselves in positions of power where we can have our voice heard, where we can be involved in policy making, and propose something different. In Gainesville, where I came from 8.5 years ago, there was a penny tax, a penny sales tax, I want to say, or we had the ability to, in Florida, each county can assess a 1% discretionary tax over the state sales tax of 6%. So we had this penny tax that was passed that was going to create a healthcare fund for people who did not have insurance. And I forget all the details of it because it was many years ago. It turned out to be an absolute disaster because they made it so restrictive for people to access the funds, they could never get them spent. They could never get the people covered. But you can learn from mistakes like that. And they tried something at the municipal level that would get at affordability and access to quality care for people who couldn't afford it. So I think it was a failure in how it was implemented, but I do think that we need to think about things like that. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. Yeah, looks like we have the Washington Department of Financial Institutions overview and financial wellness. Was it Aaron? Because I have other people on here. Okay, I have Veronica. Oh, okay, you do it. Better than me. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, well, I think this is so appropriate to have after this presentation. I invited Erin and and Nathan. I met them, well, we organized a home buying show in November. And because of that, we coordinated efforts. And what we want to do right now is present to you some workshops that they're doing on financial wellness. Because I want to see if we can all work together to give to our community these financial wellness trainings or workshops so we can help them overcome these challenges that we're all talking about. So Erin is the director for diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Department of Financial Institutions. And Nathan is the outreach specialist. Well, the exact is communications and financial education outreach.
You're right. It's all just words on a page, isn't it? Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Nathan Speaker. I'm the outreach coordinator at DFI. I'm going to talk briefly about what we do, sort of what our mission is, where our work is, and then I'll pass it off to Erin, who will tell us all about our work specifically in DEI. So DFI is a financial regulator here in the state of Washington. Any financial service provider, be it a bank, a credit union, a payday lender, a financial advisor, anybody whose job is to work with money, and pretty much just that, they are licensed and regulated by us. So if you have a financial advisor, please do make sure they have a license. We do four main things. We license, regulate, protect, and educate. In terms of licensing, you can verify a license on our webpage, yellow star there towards the bottom of the page. Very important. If we're trusting people with our money, we need to know they're above board, right? You wouldn't have a high school junior doing brain surgery, right? We probably don't want people with no education and no certifications managing our money. Very important to verify a license. You can do that on our website, dfi.wa.gov. Our second portion of our work is regulation, and we do take this seriously. We take complaints from the public, and those do those are the starting point for our investigations. You can file a complaint on our website as well as by calling us. You can also check out what sort of enforcement actions we've taken against folks. So I don't know about you all, I'm sort of nosy, a little bit of a gossip girl. So I like to go on the enforcement actions page and see who we've investigated, what they did wrong, what happened. It's a way that I can be informed about who's doing what and who not to work with, right? And also it's proof that your government is working for you. We're fortunate at DFI to where we are sort of self-funded by our own fees, licensing fees that we collect from our licensees, which is great when other state agencies need a little bit of extra help. We can help them out with that. And well, I guess that's the extent of the benefits of being self-funded. Okay, so there are all sorts of enforcement actions that can be taken, statements of charges, cease and desist orders. In some cases, we are able to recover costs, but unfortunately, a lot of the onus nowadays is on the individual to be educated. Most schools aren't really doing rigorous financial education, and if they are doing financial education, it's not really enough to last out into adulthood. Me as a college student, I would go to McDonald's and spend all of my money there. My dad told me make a budget. I set $100 as a budget. I would always spend more than $100. So if it doesn't work, it's not worth doing, right? So the onus is on individuals to sort of educate themselves, which is where we come in. As of 2008, we were legislatively charged with financial education statewide to all demographics, all communities, all age ranges, all ethnicities, and it's myself and my supervisor. So we're, yeah, we're a bit strapped here. But we do financial education presentations. They are free of charge. At this moment, we can offer them in English and in Spanish. We can offer them virtually and in person. Really, it depends on what the community needs the most. The topics really revolve mostly around personal finances, but frequent topics are budgeting, credit, investing basics, really anything to do with personal finances. If there are topics that aren't on our website that folks want us to talk about, we're happy to take suggestions as well. In addition to our presentations, we also do resource tables at community connection fairs and things of that sort, as well as online resources that we have available on our website. So those are free to request. You can do that at our website as well. You can also stop by later and I can give you a business card that has a QR code so you don't have to look online and scour all the sources, right? This is a quick snapshot of our outreach last year. We did about 107, over 170 events last year, and that's among not just the outreach team, that also involves other divisions within the Department of Financial Institutions. We talked to just under 24,000 individuals. I want to say, me, myself, I did just short of 100 events last year. So that was a lot of traveling. I think I did like 7,500 miles of driving last year. So yeah, my butt and back definitely felt it, and my chiropractor was thankful that I have such a sedentary job so that I go in for adjustments more frequently, right? But anyway, whenever we do events, we try to gather statistics. We take audience feedback as well to try to refine our presentations and make it more applicable, more relevant, and more practical for folks. We also have a heavy focus on fraud prevention as that goes in line with consumer protection. So we have a website, dfi.wa.gov/10B. It's called 10B because 2023, there were $10 billion in reported losses to fraud. 2024, that number went up to 12.5 billion, as we can see on the right side of the screen. 2025, we don't have the numbers quite yet. They might come out now in February, they might come out in March, they might not come out, who knows? But that is on a nationwide level. So that's a lot of money. And as a result of that, we created this hub to help people learn how to identify, prevent, and report fraud. We talk about different types of fraud. People can learn more about that. People learn tips on how to prevent it, and then finally where to report it. If folks don't report fraud, I mean, yeah, it's the ideal situation is to report fraud. That way you're keeping yourself safe, you're keeping your neighbors safe. If it's happened to you, it's likely happened to a lot of other people in your community. And that's a way that we as a regulatory agency can sort of be on top of things and know what is happening where to be a little bit more proactive. If we see a certain type of scam is happening more often, then we can sort of gear our education efforts more in that area. I think that might be it for me. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin Klicka, DEI director. I am a state employee, so is Nathan. So our opinions are ours. As government employees, we don't speak for our agencies. So just a little disclaimer in there. That's okay. I said it for both of us. It works. So my position was created about 5 years ago to specifically focus on narrowing the wealth gap. We talked earlier about home ownership. So one of the leading indicators of the wealth gap is home ownership. When we started talking with communities, say, hey, this is where the data is, here's some of the things we've already learned from folks. We also heard a strong voice back of financial stability as a pathway to home ownership. As we heard earlier today, those challenges are getting tighter. And so our focus this year is kind of adjusting continually to adjust with where people are at. So for 2026, our focus is on financial well-being. So what that means is kind of this pathway. A lot of folks are in survival mode, which is what we heard a lot about before. The data is not looking better on any of those indicators. And how we will move into stability, security, growth, and abundance. And this can move back and forth, right? We have households have been impacted by changes in costs, floods, fires, right? It's been a rough year. So the things that I'm working on are both that helping people move through, supporting people and moving through those pathways, but also in the impact that we're doing. So I usually work with community organizations, government, and industry. It's a co-creation model. Anyone is welcome to the table. We're really looking at trying to understand what people are experiencing, where there's gaps, when we're talking about some of the specific areas and recommendations, that's where we're trying to hone in on and work together to address those. And at the end, I'll talk about some of the things that were mentioned, because we do have some rates too within the state, like the Office of Insurance Commissioner, if people are not paying you and things like that. So talking about some examples of what those things are. It's a co-creation, so I'm more of a facilitator of bringing people together, so we kind of move and adjust as long as it's still within that financial well-being and align with our regulatory authority. Kind of anything's open by current needs. So some of the things that we did recently and over this last year are presentations about changes in public benefits, clarity of civil rights, and resources. For example, the beginning of 2025, the Human Rights Commission provided some flyers about resources for LGBTQ, talked about fair housing, explained these rights are still in place. You can call me. Here's some resources if you have any questions. Here's how you file a complaint. And then also learning from those community leaders of things happening in their community where they could talk offline about some of the things that people were happening in their community. Gaps when public benefits drop off and when households can cover basic needs. So this is, we do education that incorporates ALICE. So I use this data and I use it with other data to kind of give some additional context within where things are at the state and to support conversations. Employment Security Department is an example of that. So they did a presentation on their data, but one of the pieces of data they have is you can look by county and find out current jobs that are growing or shrinking and what people were paying in the last 6 months for those jobs and what the education level is. So that's an example of kind of pulling that information together. The Department of Social and Health Services has Washington Connection. So this is a website and a tool that community organizations can learn about, and they can help community members identify what public benefits they can qualify for, or organizations offering food pantries or other resources in their community. So we went through this, which then you can also take maybe a household that you're working with or an ALICE household, and you can run them through this system and find out what might you qualify for and what won't you. So when I've done some presentations, I've taken some average wages for a county and then learned with sadness that a lot of those programs they wouldn't qualify for and had some much lower dollar values. The dual credit program. So part of this too is not just lots of things are hard right now, but it's also, okay, where are some areas we might be able to make them better? So one of the things we've heard about for higher education is, well, it's hard to work with your employer. It's, there's a lot of other things and barriers based on income. When things are really tight, all family members have to chip in. So the dual credit program is when you're in high school, you get high school credit, but you also get college credit. And there's some reports out that kind of show the economic benefit of people who are in that program. So I'll talk a little about later is how this education can then move into other areas. And affordable housing models. So we work with partners to talk about other models of affordability. I won't give you all the titles, but there's just different ways that you can get the cost of buying a home down to an affordability price. There's some layers to that, but. So co-creation is bringing kind of all those different things together and trying to find out ways that we can either clarify resources. So maybe on the website, it's hard to find the information, or maybe the information isn't specific. So like I was saying, we had the Human Rights Commission come and speak. They shared flyers specific to specific groups that were concerned about certain rights that they could then share within their community. There may be requests for, well, can I get that in this language? What are you doing in this geographic area? So bringing people together to help provide those resources. And then also partnering on requests for presentations, kind of based on those gaps, and being creative and using all the ideas and experiences to try to come up with, okay, what can we do? So for an example, a lot of people felt like there's just no way I can afford a home. Like, I just don't know how I'm going to do it. So we had a presentation where we heard access to capital one year for access to mortgage capital. And so we helped facilitate a presentation. people were really upset and like, well, I can't afford this. How are any of my clients going to afford this? And so we came back, and this last fall, we brought in other affordability models that get that price down. So like layering down payment assistance, or something called a community land trust, co-ops, kind of habitat homes, these different models, and kind of showing some visuals of how that changes, and then some real life scenarios of what the actual payment would be in some of these scenarios. So that was kind of clarifying the information with all these weird words and acronyms and stuff that didn't feel maybe close or relevant. And then another thing that we're working on, which we're talking about some of those housing pieces too, is accessory dwelling units. So that's like your family moving in with you, but maybe you don't want them all in your space. Maybe you want them to have their own kitchen, their own separate space. Yeah, all of that, right? Right. So there's an increase in multi-generational housing. There's an increase in people coming in together because of the costs. Um, Aging parents, children who are having a hard time affording rent, kind of all of that. So we're doing a lot of working kind of across, and anyone's welcome to do this. We have a monthly meeting. We have emerging developers. We have community organizations, lenders, a lot of cities, commerce, who and their division that works on ADUs, but also their housing division that has grant programs. There's a grant open by Commerce. They shared that. The community reinvestment program funds is out right now. It closes, I think, in March, but it's tied to housing and other areas and technical assistance regionally. So kind of how we all come together and what the gaps are and sharing information. It's a very speedy meeting of lots of popcorning information, but it's a good way to kind of help share some of the gaps. And there's increases of this happening in counties, some changes in laws that are happening each year that are making some of this easier. And then expanding impacts. So for example, the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, we work with the Washington State Commission on Hispanic Affairs to share resources for questions people can ask their financial institution if they were fearful of being detained or deported, and kind of how to think through some of those questions so that they were better prepared. There's certain, like if you were the only person who can access your bank account and you felt like that was the only person you needed to access it because you're working and you're paying the bills, well, if you're detained or deported, how's your spouse going to access your finances? Right. So there are some things, kind of emergency preparedness tools. We also, as soon as floods were happening, we created a resource to help people kind of know some extra tools, like your insurance company might not tell you that they have funds to pay for food and hotel for you. If you qualify for that, or some questions you can ask your insurance company, some other resources, and kind of centralizing that in one place. How to work with your financial institution if you're like, you know, I'm having a hard time paying some of these things. There's a lot going on. And then I had kind of talked about some of the visuals. We did some images that can help clarify some of the experiences people were having when they maybe use down payment assistance, because there is a timing piece. Like if you buy a home and then sell it the next year, it's doesn't mathematically work the same as if you stay in it for a while. So we were doing kind of some visuals to kind of help clarify when people would hear bad experiences, that they could kind of visually see kind of the timing of home ownership and some other elements so that they'd have more information for decision making. And then we also, it's co-creation. So we meet current needs, whatever comes up, that's what's most important. So I gave some examples on safety concerns around concerns people are feeling around immigration and real-time updates, concerns around changes in health. So we had shared information from some of our agencies and changes in health. We had the Office of Insurance Commissioner staff speak about changes and kind of historical trends on cost of insurance and how that happens. Different alternative medical insurance options on the health benefit exchange. So they spoke. So just kind of that real time, as long as it's tied into what our authority. So still in that financial education kind of component. Some things that are a little further out, like mental health services for financial educators who are just feeling overwhelmed. We do not do wellness. Like that's not something we do. We're accountants and attorneys. You do not want us counseling anyone. But when that came up in the space, one of the community organizations did get somebody who had an expertise that was licensed in that area that they were offering that for free for some of the financial educators. So it's community is great. Co-creation is awesome. So thank you. Some things came up, so I did want to just mention really quick that, as we talk about our agency and you can file complaints with us, there are a lot of state agencies that are available if somebody's treating you poorly and you don't have to allow them to do that. So like if your insurance company is not paying you, if you contact the Office of Insurance Commissioner, they will check. And if they're not in compliant, they will make them fix it. I had an issue. Somebody in my office told me to contact them. I got a $5,000 check. It's pretty nice. The other benefit is they'll look at if they made an error in how they're doing their practices, a lot of people might get that same check, right? So there's certain things that are required to be covered for your health insurance, way you should be treated by all of your other types of insurance, home, auto, all those things. So just wanted to mention that. So yeah, any questions?
Hi, Erin. Hi, Nathan. Kim Sauer here. I'm also a Commissioner of Equity with City of Lacey. So I have two questions, I guess. So I heard that SBA will no longer allow loan to businesses that are only owned by U.S. citizens. So the people who are holding green card or different, immigration status, they will not be able to get SBA loans. Do you have any? I think that's going to become effective like March 1st. So is there do you have any plans to help for the businesses in that? And also, state contracting, a lot of businesses. She actually moved, and I think she made the position for me to go to DES. So she knows what I'm talking about. I talk with businesses that are trying to get on state contracts, and a lot of them say they could really use line of credit. So I'm wondering is there any bank that would be willing to extend line of credit if the businesses already have statewide contract, and the money will come if they do the work, right? So, I mean, is there some kind of plan that you're working on with banks? Maybe perhaps they can extend that kind of program.
So the first thing, which is in that whole disclaimer thing, our agency does not regulate business lending, and therefore, like, we don't have a piece in business lending. However, we do regulate banks and credit unions for safety and sound. So we do have kind of a role. So over the last year, we've been working with the Office of Minority and Women's Business Enterprises and Commerce, where we, about a year ago, talked to industry and said, hey, access to capital is a challenge. Industry, what is your recommendation? Which a lot of it was navigating to the right programs. So people are kind of going into the wrong doors. So like a program maybe only works with established businesses, but a bunch of startups are going through that door, and then they'll get a bunch of no's, and they'll be like, there's no access to capital, but they were going through all the wrong doors. So we did a pilot program over the last year of webinars, which then OMWE was the lead of with Commerce, with both Commerce funded programs and OMWBE, and just kind of connecting small businesses, both separately, startups from established businesses, on kind of what the underwriting criteria is generally, and kind of connecting people with that. I think there's a lot going on with budgets and things and stuff. So I think we're going to kind of see if there's iteration 2.0 over the next year. So that will be a piece, but a couple of different things that might be helpful. So if you're looking for financial institutions friendly with, and we do not promote, recommend, or endorse anyone. But there is an organization called Inclusive, so there's no E at the end, .org. And they do have what's called the Juntos Avanzamos certification, where they are working with credit unions that do work with kind of more inclusive practices that they have to meet for working with immigrant communities. So that may or may not be a place that you could go. You can also call financial institutions, just ask them. So one thing, like, you don't have to do an application for somebody to tell you something. You can advocate and ask. Like, you can be like, do you typically fund startups? And do you typically fund these types of folks, or who is the person who would know? Because if they push you through the application, that's a lot of work to then not find out if you get it. So like one thing is unfortunately you do have to kind of ask, and those things do change because people like us regulate, at least people who hold deposits, they hold your money, we regulate them to make sure that they have certain risk kind of balances in different accounts to ensure that your deposits aren't at risk. So like the more some of those things get kind of tight, the tighter they have to kind of maybe change some of their product offerings too. So the SBA has that guarantee. If that's how they're funding some of their programs, then but they may still continue to do those loans. It's kind of it's a little bit more complicated. There are some programs at Commerce that are tied to revenue-based funding. And there are a couple of folks that do that. They do, I think you have to be in business for over 1 year. And then there used to be an SBA line of credit program. I don't know if it's still in place. But that's just Erin speaking from just kind of some things that were there over the last little bit here. So, and there, you could maybe somebody can maybe also follow up with Evergreen BizLink. Is that what it's called?
Evergreen BizLink with our Washington Micro Enterprise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe ask
That's me.
if there's been updates on that, or if that's a search criteria might be an option too.
I'm sorry, I have one more question to Nathan. So you made 100 trips last year or this year. What is your measurement? I mean, as far as, do you see like number of people making savings, checking account, savings account? What is your accountability for with your activities?
That's a really great question. The extent of the evaluation of my work is an anonymized survey that I provide to the participants where they can then give feedback whether they thought today's event was helpful or not. And then they also have the chance to insert a comment if they want me to change something. So other than that, and I will say that is a huge limitation of my work, that I'm not really able to provide that one-on-one sort of follow-up with people, which in my personal opinion, I think that is the single most impactful thing, is being able to continue that relationship with the individual, connect with them on an individual level, see how they're doing 3 months from now, think about our goals, how can we get there, right? Myself being a state employee, also not being a certified financial planner or anything of the sort. I just do PowerPoints is what I say. I can't do that. It's not within my job description. It's not within my field of expertise either. So whenever we are able to work with nonprofits that can sort of give us a hand with that and sort of have a group of folks and then have them meet one-on-one with the individuals, that is really exciting. And we've had that opportunity a couple times, but it is a little bit more few and far between. You know, anything we can do as a community to boost financial education is good. I will say a couple things here. We've got $1.2 trillion in credit card debt in the United States. Trillion. That's crazy. I feel like I might remember, maybe I'm too young, when the national debt deficit was 1 trillion, and that was alarming. And now we've got that in credit card debt occurring at 28%. And of that, 73% was actually spending on bare essentials and emergency expenses. So it's not even folks going out and financing an expensive lifestyle necessarily. 73%, according to estimates, are that's $880 billion in essentials and unexpected emergencies. The last thing I'll say sort of on that is that you can't, in my view, you can't really budget your way out of a horrible economy. If the math isn't mathing, if you're Alice, what are you gonna do? You can pinch pennies and you can eat chicken necks all you want, but you're not gonna, like, I don't know. Something else has to change. That's beyond my work.
Was there any other questions?
One of the things I heard you say that made me think about how interconnected all of our work is here is when you were speaking about the dual credit programs. I've worked with young people who did Running Start, and I've worked with young people who went to alternative high schools. And I was thinking about it in relation to the previous presentation that said we're seeing without birth through kindergarten, birth through 5 care, that half of our kids aren't at grade level and they aren't at grade level and they aren't at grade level. So by the time they get to high school, half of our children are disenfranchised to engage in a dual credit program because they don't have that. Do you see what I'm saying? And it makes me wonder, in the same way that you all are thinking and educating folks about dual credit programs. I don't know, like, I understand that like childcare doesn't necessarily fall under DFI's purview. But it's interesting to me that we can say there are all of these financial advantages to literacy, to being at grade level, while also recommending realizing that structurally, systemically, we currently have a system where a large number of our kids are not going to be able to access these things. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know that DFI has the solution for this, but it's something that is sticking with me that I'm thinking about for all of us equity folks is if our kids are disenfranchised when they're born, how are we closing that gap over a lifetime?
So my role would be anything outside of policy, and our agency would be highly unlikely to be one that would do something outside of the financial, just because regulatory, that's what we do. So that would be anything that we would be allowed to kind of do on the policy side. The work that I do is more based on where we are now with what we have now. What can we do? And I'm stubborn. I'm always like, oh, there's a way. So, one of the things that we're doing is we're working with the Office of Financial Management on data so that people can see what is the data, when they can review the data and find out, okay, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? So we can kind of co-create. So there are actually some pretty big increases in apprentice programs. When you look at the data, it's actually quite high for some of the industries. So it's also helping people kind of learn, where are most people going 1 year after high school? Where are most people going after college? But where is the money? And are people being funneled into places where there is not money, right? So some of the other things, that's outside of what we do. But I think there's a lot that we, can do, at least in our swim lane. As far as the other things, every single year, the governor puts out a budget. It's on the ofm.wa.gov website, Office of Financial Management. It's usually really clear and easy to understand, so you can learn the priorities every year. And we're all part of that democratic process and have our local state representatives and senators and the governor's office. But that would be outside of our scope other than directing people to the information. But it is a good way to know what's happening and what the plan is and how things are set up so that you can kind of see where you can engage if it's something that's, but that might be something to do too, is look at some of those things and see how they align. I know that's not the answer that you might want, but that's where it's at.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
It's been a long day for everybody. Let's just be efficient with it. All right. Veronica, you're kicking us off? Yes. My name's Denise Mino. On the agenda, it refers to me as an organizational consultant. That's what I do for my day job. In this capacity, I am a volunteer with the NAACP of Thurston County. And if you didn't already know, we do have a chapter here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carol Goss, and I'm also a volunteer, and I volunteer with the League of Women Voters of Thurston County. And I'm going to take us on a little bit of a time travel. So going back to early 2021, the Thurston County Health Department declared racism to be a health crisis, and it still is a crisis. And so Dr. Jackson, who's here tonight, she started convening folks together on a on Zoom at the time during the COVID crisis, and was providing a town hall where the community came together and started talking about where the gaps are and what we can do as a county population in order to address racism and all of the other isms that come along with that. And so the various jurisdictions, including the city of Lacey, the county, the city of Olympia, and Tumwater, were all looking at what they can do within their jurisdiction to address racism and provide some insight and a lens regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that's kind of the time travel. And the League of Women Voters had an idea of bringing together the various commissions, committees, and groups of those that are working in county government to address racism. So what happened back in 2023 is we invited the jurisdictions to come together, and the first person I called to ask if they would be interested was Toby Hill Meyer, who works for the city of Olympia, and she said yes. And you know those little tweaks, those little pivots, when somebody says yes, it emboldens you to call somebody else. And so the next person I called was Shannon back there. Hello, Shannon. And she said yes. And that evening was a public meeting for the City of Lacey's Commission on Equity. And that's where I met Commissioner Brown. And so we started having those conversations back in 2023. And it was very well attended with the city of Olympia. And we decided to do another one back, this seems like so long ago now, but in 2024, we had it at the County Commission building in the atrium area in the chambers. And so one of those, you know how you work really hard and you bring people together and you think it's over, and at the last minute you turn around and there were representatives from the city of Olympia, the county, and the city of Lacey, and they were all talking together. And you know how you're trying to get out of the building, but you just can't leave because this is a moment. And that is really where we started talking. And Shannon and I walked out together. It was dark. We were tired. And Shannon, I remember you saying, I want this to be a regional event. And I want the city of Lacey to be a sponsor. And so what happened is we started bringing people together, and Veronica Hand was there, and Commissioner Brown, and John, you were there, and we were all pulling together our ideas, and we're all really busy. And there's a lot that's going on. Some of us still are working full-time. I'm kind of retired, but I find myself working full-time as a community volunteer. Raise your hand if you can identify with that. Yeah, so much for retirement. But retirement doesn't mean inactive. It means you get even busier. And so it was just a thrill to be able to start having those conversations. And someone invited you, Denise, and you got pulled in. Veronica, okay, we'll blame Veronica for that. She pulled her in. But Denise and John and Commissioner Brown and everybody had, and Allie who's over there and Golden who's over there. We all have a special magic when we pull ourselves together and we start planning. What do we do next? So this time last year, and Denise, I think you had just joined our group and wondered, what did I get into? Because we're all busy. None of us can be in the same room all at the same time. But somehow, because of our shared commitment, our shared values, and the shared goals, to be able to create an environment where we get out of our silos and we have real conversations about what's needed. So from that, we started the 2025 summit, and Denise is on.
I think one of the natural byproducts of this planning team was that we now have our own sort of support system. And last year, as I was, so I work part-time at UW, my DEI program that I was working so hard to develop got canceled mid-contract because of the political climate. And as a contractor, you know, and as UW is your employer, is this being broadcasted anywhere, by the way? That's all right. Yeah. Right. They chose federal funding for student aid over DEI programs, right? So they had to make adjustments. But where could I go for that conversation about, like, this is impacting my income, but I still could bring the work here locally, right? So that's an important piece of this is DEI is not dead, right? We may have needed to make adjustments to the work and how we deliver it, but it is absolutely needed in our community. The D stands for diversity. Look around this room. We're diverse. Our communities are diverse. And we need to continue to create those inclusive and equitable environments that create that feeling of belonging. So we started out kind of fumbling our way through because we were a new group, right? Tuckman's model of teams getting together, right? You're storming, norming, performing. We were just kind of feeling our way through with the group. We settled upon a shared power model, so it was not hierarchical. We did need a core leadership team for decision making, but it's a longer process when you're sharing power. It's a longer process because we're talking through things and ensuring that we're listening to all voices, right? But it was far more effective, far more inclusive, and far more equitable. So with that, we had our May 10th event. It was all day on a Saturday, 9 to 3:30. We had over 200 people registered, and we had 125 approximately show up. It was well attended for our first big event, right? Piggybacking off of Carol's event the year before. We had Aaron Jones was our keynote speaker, and we had a youth panel. And thank you to, who was Kieran? Yes, Kieran Powell. Yeah, from the Lacey Youth Council, who helped us with that. And it was like the highlight. Like they stole the show. These teenagers, it was amazing. And they were speaking truth. We had one youth who was incarcerated, who was part of the panel, and he got to speak his truth. And he just, every time I see him, he's like, thank you for giving me a chance. Now this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to talk about mass incarceration. I want to talk about, I want to share my story. So there were so many great byproducts that came of this. We had lunch, and then for the afternoon, we had workshops. And community conversations, if folks didn't want to actually go to workshops, we had tabletop conversations that were facilitated. And in the end, everyone was like, we want more of this. So that leads us to more efforts. Veronica's going to talk about our plan for the 2026 DEI B Summit. We voted to add the B.
Yeah, like Denise said, it's really a group effort, a community effort. So we did vote to add a B to the DI. So this year we're gonna have a 1.3 day event. It's gonna be again at SPSCC. They're one of our partners and sponsors, the Lacey campus. The first day, May 1st, is gonna be from 5:30 to 7:38. We're still working on the agenda for that evening, but we wanted to be very inclusive. We want to have conversation with all the jurisdictions and other, we want to also include the tribes more because last year we didn't have a lot of tribal participation. And then Saturday, which is the bigger day, we're gonna start registration at 8 o'clock, I think. But we're gonna follow the very similar model. In the morning, we want to start off with some event with the tribes, led by the tribes, and then the keynote speaker, who's also gonna take us into the youth panel. We want to follow the same model because last year they were so open, so vulnerable. They set the tone for the whole event. And I don't know how the energy worked because they were sharing difficult stories, their life stories, and they all had different backgrounds. So it was super diverse, but they were super humble, I guess, too. So they kind of set the bar very high for the rest of us. So we want to follow the same model and do something very similar this year. And after that youth panel led by the keynote speaker, we're going to have again the lunch. Then we do the lunch as a cultural experience as well. Last year it was Asha who served the meal. Maybe we can support them again and do it again. And then the afternoon, what we're doing this year is we incorporated all the feedback from last year, and we're incorporating it into the afternoon sessions, the breakout sessions. So we're having 5 or 6, so 2 tracks, but there are going to be 5 or 6 breakout sessions going on. And at the end, we're just going to do a wrap up, some commitments for next year, and announce the next year, hopefully the 2027 summit. We obviously want this to be a big community event. We have already a very good group of participating as organizers, and I think we have a very good balance of the cities, the county, community organizations, and the community in general, some volunteers. So we're super grateful for these. We're still looking for a sponsorship, but we're gonna get there. Last year we started with $5,000, and we even served lunch for 115 people or 125 people free. So, and that's also our priority for next year, or for this year, sorry. We wanna do a free event as well. We don't want the community to pay, or maybe if we have to charge something, it's going to be something symbolic like $20 or something like that. But I don't know if you have any ideas, any feedback, if you want to share any idea that you would like us to incorporate into this year, we're super welcome to receive any ideas, feedback, or suggestions. I don't know if you have any questions.
Can someone put the new flyer up for the coming?
I didn't give it to them.
Oh, shit.
Because we still are defining some
Okay.
things.
It's in progress.
Yeah, it's still in progress, so we
Save the date now.
but yeah,
May 1st and 2nd, the evening of May 1st.
and it's here, yeah, here.
See Lacey.
It's-
Lacey.
Yeah, just right here. Mhm. The one thing that we're doing this year different from last year is that we're including the state. So the Office of Equity is partnering with us, and they're going to help us reach out to state employees to help us also include them, and the business resource groups, because they all serve multicultural communities. So that's also going to be a very big plus for our summit.
I have a question. How many of you here tonight came to the summit? They heard me. Does anyone want to just share a quick comment about kind of the takeaway that you had?
I don't want to forget something. The FI is gonna do one of the workshops with us. We invited them, and so they already accepted. So I'm very happy that we're working on that too, and that we're starting to do that more, that collaboration. So thank you. Yeah, sorry.
That's all right, because wait, there's more. So, but just, does anyone want to make a comment about the event back in May 10th last year?
And yeah, it was a beautiful time.
Great, yeah. Anyone else? Thank you, Commissioner.
I was very impressed to see that even though it was hard times, the environment, the whole day was super positive. Even though it started with very tough, difficult conversations, the energy, the vibe, the whole day was very high, very positive, happy. And when we wrapped up, it was like we were all up here, right?
Yeah.
There was something super unexpected, but also beautiful.
I would just like to add that it really was.
If I could, sorry to interrupt you, Councilmember or Commissioner, if we could just use the microphones, because there are folks who are also listening online right now, and so it's helpful for them to hear the
I would just like
experience.
to add that. Sorry. I would just like to add that it really was like a community effort, like a labor of love, and I think it really showed through at the event. Everybody that was there wanted to be there, wanted to participate in the work, was there to have important conversations. We even had like a few last minute folks that showed up, either that didn't register and just kind of showed up to be a part of it, or that were there as like a vendor or a spectator. That even wanted to like support our efforts after the fact financially because they saw how much value that it brought. And being a part of that, they were so grateful to be invited to have a seat at the table. And so I expect this year will be even better. And I would also like to point out that we have a meeting next Monday.
Monday.
If anybody would like to
yes.
join us, just putting that out there.
Right.
Well, we mean to do that.
We'll send you the Zoom link, right? Right, Allie? Okay, absolutely. So I'll just part with saying that what really made the magic, I think, is the very unique collaborative leadership model that we have. And, you know, there are times where if you look at the list of people who help with planning, you just wonder, they have enough to do just with their day job. And at the same time, it's really important to remember, and this is a quote that's often attributed as an African proverb, and of Cory Booker and lots of other people I've heard it from. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we were so blessed to have the people we have, and we're getting even more connection and involvement. So thank you so much. And save the date, May 1st and May 2nd. Question? Questions?
Yeah.
Is there any way that we can donate?
Is there any way? Who paid you to say that? Yes, there is. And you can talk to that nice woman right over there sitting next to Golden. And the YWCA is our fiscal sponsor this year. We didn't have a fiscal sponsor last year. And the League of Women Voters sort of was a temporary repository, turning all of the donations into payments. And for our panelists and for our presenters and for our moderator and for the delicious lunch. And this year we have, and that's when you know it's real, is kind of when you have to sign the contract. And so the YWCA, and I'm proud to say, is an anti-racist organization that we're thrilled to have as our fiscal sponsor. So
I just had a question about whether or not you have vendor tabling featuring small businesses.
yes,
by
we
chance?
do.
Okay.
Yes. So mark your calendars for May 1st and May 2nd. That's a great question. Thank you. And as John was saying, Commissioner Edward was saying that we had a number of donations that came after the event. And so they want to know, when is it happening and what can they do? So thank you. Anybody else have a question?
Just a note about registration.
Go ahead.
Okay. So YWCA is our fiscal sponsor. They're also handling our registration. So that should be available in the coming weeks. And Veronica will distribute accordingly, right, somehow. So if you want to get on the recipient list, make sure you get a hold of Veronica. And I just want to say, my measure for success of last year was when Dr. Jackson came up and gave me a hug and said, good job. Thank you, everyone.
And I just want to mention that actually the regional DIB meeting that we're having is a direct result from the summit, for last year's summit. So that's the reason why we're here, because of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. We just have one more quick update from our jurisdictional updates and regional discussion. We got Michelle Chavez, and I think Shannon is going to come up and give us a quick update. Okay, great.
So we're going to give a quick update on the City of Lacey Human Services Commission, the Lacey Youth Council, the Commission on Equity, and then we're going to also open it up to our other jurisdictions to give updates on what's happening in the other parts of the county. So the Human Services Commission, I want to thank everybody for being here. Could you guys stand up, the Human Services Commission, just so we can identify you guys? Thank you so much. We are a seven-member, very dedicated commission, and these are kind of the tasks that we have based on our task and how the commission was created. The main charge of the commission is to identify and make recommendations on human service needs and review and make recommendations on human services related policies and review human service grant applications and make recommendations for the distribution of human service grant funds. So I hope you all know that the City of Lacey City Council is dedicated about $300,000 in general fund each year. We're entering year 3 on that wonderful program, and that is available to our nonprofit community to provide direct service. So we are going to be hopefully opening up applications for that again, probably May or June this year. We're working on our work plan for 2026. There's 3 kind of main items. Again, we want to review and make recommendations on that grant program and policy and procedures. And the commission, they review the things that are coming forward with the grant, and then they make recommendations, and then City Council has the final say on all the allocations for funds and any kind of policy changes we might make and things like that. We're working on a human services strategic plan. A lot of you are probably going to be invited to focus groups where we've done 4 focus groups so far in the community. We're going out into the community and meeting people where they're at. And so you'll be seeing hopefully a strategic plan coming out with a recommendation for priorities in April. So all of this outreach and engagement that we're doing helps to inform, hopefully giving some city leadership ways to create priorities for human service funding. And then you may be aware we have our local community development block grant dollars now from the federal government. So this commission also helps us in reviewing and with meeting all of our federal requirements for public comment, public transparency, all of that. So we're going to be every year now looking at community development block grant projects locally here and making recommendations to the council on how to fund those. So that is what is up with the Human Services Commission right now. And then we have our Lacey Youth Council.
Hello, I'm Michelle. I'm from the Lacey Youth Council, and I'll be recapping the 2024 Youth Summit. So the Youth Summit is a free and engaging opportunity for youth in our community to collaborate. And our first one was in 2024. We had prizes and speakers and resume reviews and headshots and games and of course pizza and snacks. And the summit this year will be used to help youth build a strong foundation as they grow into adulthood and begin thinking about college and employment in the future.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and for our upcoming summit, we have already met with the Olympia Youth Council and begun planning. After our first meeting, we formed a joint planning subcommittee to continue planning and maintain communication between both the Lacey and Olympia Youth Councils. This year, our theme is Adulting 101, and the event is going And the event's gonna be featuring, a youth discussion panel, keynote speaker, and then again, like last year, more pizza, community resources, headshots and resume review, games, and prizes. Currently, we are still finalizing a location for the event, and as of now, the subcommittee has not met, but we will next month for the first time. So exciting.
Council leaves up front. Are there any questions for the youth council members? They did such a fantastic job on their presentation. Yeah. So the question was, how can we get involved and do they need some support?
I will defer to Ms. Siglin.
That's me. I'm Miss Siglin. To most people, I just go by Sadie, and I'm the Youth Council staff liaison. You can email. The Youth Council has their own official city emails. They are an official advisory body at LYC. It's cityoflacey.org. We're still finalizing the date, so right now there is kind of some variables in the support we may need, but there's definitely an opportunity for community collaboration. As part of the summit is hosting a resource fair where we gather all the resources in the community that youth may not know they even have access to and things that they can do and get help for. So definitely reach out and we can get some more information to anybody interested in supporting or participating in the event.
Any other questions for the youth council? Great job. Fantastic. Well done. Well done. Well, good evening, everyone. How we doing? Good, good. I have been here at the city now for 5 years, and I've never actually given a presentation from this podium. So this is my first time standing right here. This is actually really, really interesting. And I have never had to look back here to see where my slide is. So I'm actually going to take this because this feels a lot more natural. So I'm going to talk like this. We're going to dive into a really quick slide deck, and then I want to have some conversation with you all, picking up on some of the threads of the topics that we talked about last time. For those of you who were there last time, some of these slides are going to look familiar, but I do see a lot of new faces out here, so I just want to make sure that we're covering some of the background of the Commission on Equity. So first and foremost, the Commission on Equity was established by the Lacey City Council, really to help create a more welcoming community, to continue critical conversations on race and equity, to seek greater participation from underrepresented community members, and to identify existing gaps and barriers that could prevent full participation. We have a strategic plan, and this was something that our commissioners on the Commission on Equity worked on for 3+ years. And so like our Human Service Commission, if I could get the Commission on Equity members to stand up for me. And well, thank you so much for all the work you all have done and continue to do day in, day out. Like I said, they worked really hard on creating this strategic plan that eventually went to the City Council and was adopted, and it serves as our guide for how we're working to advance and support equity efforts in the greater Lacey community. Just to kind of show the model of how it all works, we have the community, we have the City Council. They adopt policy documents such as our comprehensive plan and our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategic plan. And then we have work plans. Here it says 2025, and we are going in front of council here in a couple of weeks to get our 2026 work plan adopted, and we'll be working off of that. We have our Commission on Equity meetings. We meet once a month, and during those meetings, we go over different policies and programs, and we get recommendations for the City Council. And the Commission on Equity has been very, very busy over the last couple of years, not only working on the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategic plan, but working on these items and probably about 50 other items that also did not make it onto this screen because the font would get really, really small and you wouldn't be able to see it all. We are doing a lot of great things since the last time we saw you, and so I just want to give you a couple of updates, but I also want to hear from a couple of our commissioners on some of these items. Some of the things we've done since the last meeting we had was we held our first retreat for the commission, and we were able to do a SOAR exercise that looked at our strengths, our opportunities, our aspirations, and then our results. Is there a commissioner who'd want to speak on that retreat and that process? It's like y'all practice this. All right. Well, we had a fantastic meeting. We were able to understand, hey, like, what's working well? What are some of the things that we want to look at so that we can work even better together as a group moving forward? We also worked on a couple of policy items, including creating 2 new programs, and that is our Poet Laureate program and our Community and Cultural Event Grant program. And this time I've learned my lesson. I'm just going to hand the mic off to somebody. Talk about those 2?
We met with our current and outgoing poet laureate. She gave a presentation and helped us to understand exactly what a poet laureate does. And then we were looking for her successor. And so she covered the requirements, the qualifications, and those things that the city's looking for our next poet laureate. And so, wow, it was educational. And that is a really great program. And the thing that she does in the community is truly amazing. And I learned a lot, and we all did. The community and cultural events grant policy. And these are funds that the various organizations can tap into. There's an application process that you go through, and you should really take a look at it and apply for those various grants. And the thing to keep in mind is that they are reimbursable grants. So you have to do the work, and then you apply with the invoices and all, and you're reimbursed. So yes, so you were doing some wonderful things. So document it and apply for those grants, and you'll be successful with your events.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown, for the help with that. We've heard a lot about our 2025 and the 2026 diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, Thurston forward planning that's going on. But we also had a Thurston County Realtor Association Home Buying Expo. And would you like to give an update on that, Veronica?
So the Thurston County Realtors Association approached us with the idea of having partnering with the city of Lacey for a first-time home buyers show. And that evolved into a multi-jurisdiction. So it was a Thurston County event organized with support with the city of Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, Thurston County, and the Realtors Association. We had the event at November 8th at the Lacey Community Center. We have close to 100 visitors. But it was very interesting because the visitors that were there, they were very focused on well, I'll let you talk a little bit after that, but after I finish talking, but they were very focused. They knew what they wanted. They were not just like hanging out, grabbing stuff, free stuff. It was like super oriented. We had great results. We already have 3 buyers who got their house, and there's 10 in process right now going through escrow. So yeah, it was a great event. It was, again, pulling all of us together, like you were saying, Carol, and like we are here today. So that model has been very successful, at least for our communities. And I will share a little bit, if you don't mind, about your experience there.
I was agreeing and supporting. So we had a little Tumwater table, and it was really amazing. It was a regional event because folks who live and work in Tumwater came to the table, and we were able to talk about housing. We were able to answer all the hot questions like what's going on with the brewery and all those fun things. So thank you. And I hope that maybe you consider Tumwater to host the event this year.
Thank you. You all heard that.
Yes. And what we did also, we wanted it to be also an educational event. So we had one workshop. The title was The Home Buying Journey. So it was educating the attendees, and they were people who went there just for the workshop. So they were going through the
tables and waiting for the workshop to happen. But that was super well attended, and the speaker told us that she's done events where they had like double the amount of people volunteering or working on the event, and with more resources that we have, and they didn't have the response and the attendance in the workshops that they had at our event. So again, working in community and partnering was very good. I guess another key factor was that in terms of exhibitors, everybody who needed to be there was there, except DFI. But we're gonna fix that. No, but they did help us promote the event. That was also something that helped us a lot. The OFM, the Office of Financial Management, reached out to state agencies helping us promote it. So that helped us a lot. And this year we're gonna do it again. It's gonna be on April 18. And I'm very sorry, but I just learned from the Thurston County Realtors Association, they're doing it in Olympia, the Olympia Center, but we can do it in Tumwater. Yes, so next time we can totally do it in Tumwater, because I'm sure that we're gonna keep doing it. I don't know if you have any questions about that event. Nope. Okay, and it was free. The attendance and all the exhibitors, the Thurston Realtors Association, they got the grant. So all the people who were exhibiting there and tabling, it was all free. And we got a lot of support also from other state agencies. The Department of Commerce helped us as well. So, and the Office of Equity.
What was the date?
Last year was November 8th. The coming one is April 18th. So it's a Saturday. This one in April is going to be shorter. It's going to be from 10 to 2 at the Olympia Center.
Great. Thank you for that, Veronica. I appreciate it. I think so. Should we highlight that? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, the Thurston County Realtors Association gave me an award for Partner of the Year.
Right. So that was really 2025. And now we're going to turn our attention to 2026 and all of the things that the Commission on Equity are going to be looking at here in the future. And this is where I really did use the very, very small fonts, but we won't go over all of this. All of this is to say is we're working on this work plan. It's going to go in front of our city council here on February 17th. We hope it gets approved or approved with some modifications here based on what the council is looking for the work to do with the commission. But some of the 2026 initiatives that I do just want to briefly highlight, we're going to, now that we have the policy on the Poet Laureate, we are actively advertising. So if anybody in this room is a poet or knows a friend who knows a poet, if you don't mind passing on this opportunity, we'd really appreciate that. The application process is closing here pretty soon, and we'd love to get as many applicants as we possibly can. We're also opened up the application for the community and cultural grant as well. And so we're going to be going through that process for the first time. We are going to be providing the city council as well as the community our very first update on our strategic plan. Now that it's been adopted for over a year, we're going to be doing a report card, for lack of a better term, here on how we're doing and what we're doing. We're also going to be taking a look at some of our utility relief programs, our community liaison program, continuing with the Thurston Forward Summit, taking a look at our advisory board processes, continuing on with our utility reps, working on a community connectivity tool, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later here tonight. But really what we're looking for is a resource hub that we can have information that could be shared. And so we hope to make this kind of a Thurston County-wide, and we're open to ideas of how best to do this. And so it's something that the commission has been contemplating, and something we hope that we may be able to connect with you all on. Looking at our kind of leadership, mentorship, training opportunities, including our application process, taking a look at how the city recognizes folks in the community, and then any other city documents, policies, or programs as they come up, as they commonly do come up throughout the year. So we'll be adding a lot of things between then and now. Before we jump into the recap of the last time we all got together, I do want to hand it over to the other jurisdictions to be able to provide an update. And so Olympia, Tumwater, who wants to go first? Kelly, you're closest.
Hello, my name is Kelly Adams. I'm the Assistant City Administrator for Tumwater. And I'm sure as you've read, we've had a little bit of a government transition. We have a new mayor and a new city administrator. And I am very honored that we get to have our Equity Commission filled. So we're hoping to do interviews in the first week in March. And so I have some flyers. You can also visit our website at www.ci.tumwater.wa.us. It just rolls off the tongue. And so we are looking for 7 folks. One can be from the UGA in Tumwater. So we're very excited to get that staffed. I actually manage economic development, so it'll be a bit of a unique equity commission in that we will address barriers, but we will also have our first focus be on the comprehensive element of economic development. So something that we can really look at poverty, we can look at disparities and barriers. Yeah, so if there's any questions, I can also answer questions about the brewery, but that, during my day job. Yeah.
I'm going to sit back down because then I'll be less nervous. So my name is Margot Morales. I'm the staff liaison for the City of Olympia Social Justice and Equity Commission. Thank you to the commissioners that made it here tonight. I know a couple people had to duck out early. So in 2025 was my first year being the staff liaison. So thank you to commissioners who've been patient with me as I learn how to support you guys. There was a lot of great things that happened last year. Continuing work on experiences of discrimination. So the city did a comprehensive report, worked with a consultant to look at what community members were experiencing in the city of Olympia. And the commission last year at their retreat and the year before has been kind of working through that report. And we're going to continue in 2026 looking at scoping what does that work look like? What's the role of the commission? What's the role of the city? So continuing to have those conversations and look at what that looks like. Also, last year we finished up review of all of the comp plan chapters for the city of Olympia. So that was a really big undertaking and a really big project, and saw a lot of updates and changes, some in small, some in large ways to the comp plan to really make it more equitable and accessible for community members. This year, we're also about to have our work plan go before our council committees for approval, and included in that work plan is some work, again, around the experiences of discrimination. Also looking at both the Social Justice and Equity Commission and community engagement opportunities, but then also using the commission to look at the city's engagement as a whole and looking at how can we be more equitable and inclusive and getting more voices represented in the city's public engagement. Also, a couple of years ago, the city did a process called Reimagining Public Safety, and there were a number of actions and recommendations that came out of that. And so it's time for the city to kind of take a look at those actions and recommendations and kind of look at what we've accomplished and where we can go from here. So hoping to loop in the commission in that conversation as that original work group no longer exists. A lot of people have moved out of the community. So that's kind of exciting. And what's the other thing? I feel like there was something else and now I can't remember. But yeah, really excited about the work that we're going to get a chance to do. Room open for council referrals on policy and things that pop up over time. So yeah, thank you.
Anybody from Thurston County here? We'll get them next time. All right. Just want to take a brief pause in the presentations. We've been talking here for about 2.5 hours. And what I'd like you all to do is spend 2 minutes talking with your small tables. Make sure that you know everybody, where they're from. Take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself.
I'm John. John? John.
All right, take another 30 seconds or so to wrap up this introductory conversation. All right, if we can bring it back as a group here, you'll have another opportunity to chat with your table mates here in just a second. If we could bring it back. I think I've got 70% of the. Can't hear me? Now you can hear me. Okay, great. All right, let's bring it on back here. So just to recap, last time we were all together in the county fairgrounds. I think it was about 23 degrees. I'm so thankful it's a little bit warmer here right now. We asked you all 4 questions, and you all provided us with a lot of wonderful feedback. And what we've done here, and I want to thank Michelle Chavez here, put all of this together, was synthesized a lot of the information that you all provided on these questions. And one of the first questions we asked was a 2-parter, and that was, what common goals do we have? And then what common challenges do we have? And so just starting off with the common goals, we're not going to go through all of these, but if you take a look at this list, you can see, being collaborative, having strength, having a mission focus on justice, having defined roles and power, making Thurston County a better place to live, removing silos, the list goes on and on. What I'd like you all to do is just take a couple of seconds and read through the list here. And one of the feedback points we want to make sure that we connect with you all is, did we get everything? Was there anything that was missing that you all said that you wanted to make sure ends up on this list?
It was mentioned earlier that racism was a health crisis, and I'm wondering about health. As, yeah, as a common goal.
All right, so adding racism as a health crisis and solving that, I would, yep.
Anything there addressing health?
Addressing health, yep. So adding something to that effect. And I think there was a lot of conversation at the last meeting on that as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else from anybody else?
I would like to see something about environmental justice because, as we know, like low income families are disproportionately impacted by environmental impacts. So that's something that I'm not seeing up there either.
All right. Any other additions? Those are two good ones.
One of the things we talked about, and we've been talking about on our Equity Commission, the fact that here in Thurston County, as we see the challenges facing our country and our systems right now, that we can't go on talking about it as though these things are happening in other places. There are things happening right here in Thurston County that we need to acknowledge in order to move forward on working on them. So the need to get out of denial about some of the things. And we just need to keep that in front of us as these lists grow and grow.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. And I think that's a really good kind of transition to the challenges, right, of, recognizing that these things are here, right, happening here. It's not somewhere else. So take a second here. The second part of that question was on those challenges. What are the common challenges shared across the advisory boards? And some of the challenges were, support, making sure that there was adequate support for all of the boards and the work that's being done, uncertain times, economic turmoil, existing hurdles to getting buy-in from stakeholders across the community, those limited resources, and people continuing to feel unheard. Take a second at your small tables and talk about if there's anything that may be missing on this list.
Resources.
Discussed about like creating, like collaborating on like a regional newsletter, some kind of information system with like current events, resource hub kind of stuff, one-stop shop stuff for other folks. What that looks like is
Every time how the service.
Yeah, you're not wrong. your perception. Yeah.
You have to actually go search.
Listening session. We were like, we didn't even know we had a commission. I'm like, yeah, and like 2 of the 7 of us are queer. They're like, oh.
But like they are.
Again, they've lived here 10, 15, 20 years as like queer owners. Like, yeah, Lake doesn't do that. Like, no, we've been doing it. It's like we're here. We've been trying to get the word out, but like, where do you go?
Yeah, responsibility is like. Yeah. I know. So you're like. On the side of it, one of the. On.
All right, tables. What other common challenges may be missing from the list that you all were discussing? Anything you'd want to add?
I was just, sorry, I was just referring to the previous slide. One of the oddly most important things I personally saw in that one was the definition of DEIB. And, I think it's really important to define exactly what that is, just because the message of DEI in general has been hijacked and politicized. And so that gets, when things like that happen, people only see surface results or definitions of that. And so I think and this is what we were talking about at our table, sorry. What I think that does is helps take back the power of that from the people that are trying to water it down and make it seem like a bad thing, if that makes sense.
We also talked about raising awareness and letting people know that we're still here, that there is a perception that all the DEI went away.
Thank you for sharing that.
We talked about the challenge of communicating to getting information out to the community and the community getting information to us. We've done focus groups and that, but we have to keep our minds open about how we put out our information so that everybody here actually hears it.
We talked about turning good conversations into actionable items. A lot of times we'll have that conversation and the action actually doesn't ever come to fruition. So talking about that and then also talking about, what was your name again?
Courageous conversation.
Courageous conversation. I like the way you said that. So having those courageous conversations, getting people, how can we get people to that vulnerable place where they're able to engage in those conversations? Those are troubling conversations. Some people don't want to look it in the face. What problems is somebody facing right now? Like she had mentioned earlier, these are things that we're in denial about, but they're happening here in Thurston County. And I think that people who like having those conversations or are comfortable with it, they are having those conversations. So how do we open that up to be able to allow others who may not be so comfortable or may not be part of those communities who are directly affected? How do we open that up so that they can engage and feel comfortable?
I'm going to build on that because we had basically the same conversation at our table. Yeah, pretty much. We were discussing that given that the work of equity is never a like, and we did it, that having a common understanding or common understanding around sort of micro milestones, successes, things that we can articulate to so that when we look back on our work, we can say we did that. That thing happened. You know, it might be we've had a looking forward, we've had a Thurston Forward DEI summit for the past 5 years, right? That would be so the conversations into actionable things that we can then recognize as measure like that progress has happened. Because to your point, a lot of folks who aren't already in these spaces being like, we had a really good conversation is not necessarily the selling point, right? But being able to be like, oh, we reviewed these X, Y, and Z policies, and now they are more equitable in X, Y, and Z ways. Like the tangibles are what the folks who are not in this room need to hear from us. And the only way that'll happen is us doing them.
Okay, I don't know if we can add the list because we're kind of overwhelmed talking about the issues and we so what action can we take? I couldn't suggest anything that makes sense at the moment because I mean all the information that we heard and everything, it's just a little overwhelming to pick the direction, to be honest. But I do know that you know where you come from, what are the issues, it's not as important as where we going together. I see the direction there. I heard that someone saying, you know, where you come from is important, your culture and everything's good, but also the fact that where we going together is really important. So, but I don't know. I don't have a good actionable item that we could add it there. Just more thoughts and more research and things like that needed as far as yeah, so sorry.
Sure, thank you all.
Sure. It would be great if we had a shared calendar or a website where we could all go and know about all the events, DEI related events, so that we can, you know, come to New Life Baptist Church and see their exhibit, right? And that we would know what hours that was open. The National Day of Racial Healing, those sorts of events. Like this is the silo, addressing the silo thing, right? We're all doing great things. And the worst thing is when I find out a couple days later and they're like, hey, we didn't see you. Allie sent me a picture. She's like, I see you, you're in the video. I'm like, well, yeah, where are you? Right? And it's like, okay, I would have been there if I had known about it. So like, I would love to know all of you. I would love to know your name. I would love to be in community with you, right? And how can I do that if we don't have spaces to gather? And those spaces do exist, but how do we get the information out? And social media is one way, but also having a website with maybe a running list of events so that we don't schedule over each other, right? One organization is doing something the same weekend we're doing ours, or the day before, or something like that. So trying to avoid those sorts of conflicts. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Are we about to wrap it up? Is that?
No, actually, we're not, and that's I just want to make sure we're keeping this moving. So.
Well, as they gather their thoughts, I looked at my notes from our last gathering and what I see that how to get more people involved and bridging ideological divides. And also making the county a better place to live, which was a challenge. And also the being able to communicate with the other jurisdictions and with the public. And how do we manage that, which kind of gets back to that aspect of that calendar. Okay, team.
Okay. I'm off work now. So we were also talking about just kind of that transparency and accountability and that continuity of so when people have the courage to share something that you get the clarity of, well, what's an action item? Did I do that action item? Do we follow up? And then until it's followed up, that you keep that. So I mean, all government is run by a democracy. It's run by the people. And so how are we adjusting to what people want? So like when I say something that maybe I used an acronym or I said something in a very governmenty way where I didn't create a clear pathway, that people have permission to push back, so that we adjust rather than people adjust because it's their government. Is that okay?
Well, I appreciate all of the conversation, and what I love about this group and what we've discussed tonight is you all are problem solvers. You're active because we're here talking about our common opportunities and our common challenges, and you're getting to, hey, how can we collaborate and work together, which I absolutely love, which was the next list. And you've already named a lot of the things that were just discussed here. So you can see some of the things that were brought up last time we all met was getting this group together on a quarterly basis. Learning from other agencies, how can we share data and information? And I love the idea, the calendar that was, kind of thought and added to of not just information about programs that maybe internally jurisdictions are doing, but also programming and getting that information out. Looking to meet more consistently and share ideas, having an equity heat map across Thurston County that is similar, taking a look at how we host our community engagement sessions and seeing if there's some ways that we can work together, holding regional events or combining some of those efforts. We have the Lacey Cultural Celebration coming up, just as an example here in early March, and we'd love to see y'all out there. Working to involve our local universities, seniors, and our businesses, expanding engagement with youth and providing mentorship, modernizing some of our outreach, what we heard previously of engaging other community members, reaching unrepresented groups, again, involving universities, seniors, businesses. Helping with getting streaming out there of information and learning to navigate the mission. So those were some opportunities that you all identified just broadly. And then we got even more granular with the fourth question, which was how can we be better at sharing information across all of these advisory boards through Thurston County. And one of the things we heard was network. That was a big one that was brought up. And that's why we wanted to bring you all here together, not only for the quarterly meetings, but just so that you all can talk, right? And get to know each other too. Like you said, get to know everybody's name, their faces. Have those regular meetings and rotate them so we can go visit other jurisdictions and see what's going on in those jurisdictions. Have opportunities for chairs of our advisory boards to meet, have a resource sharing element. And one of the things that was brought up was some type of newsletter or way to get information out to everybody. Creating action-focused assignments, again, having those outreach events, having small projects that you can contribute across jurisdictions, having those courageous conversations that Dr. Jackson brought up, choosing a topic and seeing if there could be some way that we could take a look at it as a group, and then, like I mentioned, collaborating on events throughout Thurston County a little bit earlier. The final question that we asked to kind of tie all of that together was thinking with all of this information and then also trying to think, okay, there's a lot of things that you all came up with. If we were to take some small practical steps in the next 6 months to a year, what would that look like? And so on this list, on our last discussion, we talked about scheduling the next regional meeting. So check, we did that one, but that's just one, and we're hoping to get some more meetings scheduled here shortly. Taking a look at all of the lists that we put together and coming up with some thoughts and ideas that we could come back to some of our jurisdictions to get more research and to take a look at what that could look like in the future. Creating some information channels, having city leaders at different types of meetings, sharing the information and getting it out, and then meeting with each other. And there was a conversation about some quorum. We are hosting a public meeting here tonight, so the public is open and able to attend. And then sharing failures as well as success, because there was a conversation about how we can learn from failures as much as we can learn from successes. So with all of that information, what I'd like you all to do at the small tables again is just to talk about, hey, we've talked broadly about some ideas, and we just want to get some more feedback from you all on some like possibilities so that staff can get together, have some more discussions, and understand kind of what could be some next steps in preparation for our next meeting. So what I'd like you all to do is, again, go into your small groups, talk about all of the information that we just went through, and think about what in addition to scheduling these quarterly meetings, could be beneficial in the short term. Here. So what I'm just asking you all to do is if you could take a couple of minutes, we've gone through a bunch of lists. I just want to make sure we didn't leave anything off. And then as we're starting to think about staff taking a deeper dive into this, was there anything that was missing that we should make sure that gets consideration? And then what could be some possibilities that staff can do a deeper dive and come back to this group and provide some options or alternatives moving forward?
Hello, everyone. I don't know if you're ready for dinner, but I'm getting close. So just bringing us back together really quickly and maybe recapping our table conversations. Is that our goal? I think our table conversation really focused around that third bullet of exploring information sharing and communication possibilities, and really looking at, as staff liaisons, how can we help to facilitate that and what would that look like? You know, keeping in mind that this is a public meeting and we can't have a giant newsletter where everybody can be replying to each other and creating digital quorums, but that's something I think that staff could sit down and talk about. What are some logistics of ways that we could be in better communication with the different commissions and boards. And then also some joint engagement and outreach was really something that we had talked about looking at. And yeah, and just that bullet 1 and 2 were kind of on the way. So it's exciting.
Great. The biggest part of the conversation that we had was kind of like not reinventing the wheel, but rather like idea sharing and learning from each other, and then also having more conversations in person, and getting to know each other and having those difficult conversations and creating a space for them. Did I capture that? Is that feeling pretty okay?
I think what we focused on was safety and how do we create safety in doing this work? How do we create unity of communication without making people less safe? We don't want danger to be the consequence of volunteering to help. Did you want to say anything about that? Because you said it really eloquently.
So my name is Bonnie Hale. I work at the City of Tumwater, but I'm also on the board for the Hispanic Roundtable. And I'm sure a lot of you already know about the Latin Youth Summit that we have every year. And this year, rather in November, it's actually coincidentally on April 18th. And it's a digital-only version for very obvious reasons. It's called the Latin Youth Summit. And frankly, we don't want to have a bunch of children out there on the SPSCC campus being compromised. So we had very candid conversations with security at SPSCC, and their answer is, if they come, we can't really do a whole lot, you know, so that's why we got to that decision. I also gave the example of rapid response signal chat. I know that there was something in the Olympian talking about how that was compromised, and so really being cognizant of the use of social media, the use of using digital networks, the use of using city staff who, if they put anything on paper, it's on public record, and so compromising people's personal information. There's a lot of problems that we have, and I don't have all of the solutions, but definitely being cognizant of those safety issues because they're very real, and these are the people that we're trying to help, so.
Okay, so we talked about some actionable thing that we can think of until next meeting. I mean, something that we can see the small steps of that implementing. We agreed to think that networking and keeping this together, that we get together, bouncing our ideas and monitoring our progress. Communicating that is really good thing. We want to make sure that we do that. And even before that, if we need to keep our communication channel open to see the updates and so forth, we should do that. So we, yeah.
I wondered really kind of concretely if each of our entities or DEIB commissions could bring one project or one issue that and how it came to them and how they followed it and what the outcomes were, or what yeah, so then we could learn really concrete how things are going in each of the entities.
Along those lines, Commissioner Clay, I think the DEIB Summit is a great opportunity to showcase some of the work that the municipalities and the county is doing, right? And last year, Commissioner Brown facilitated that session. And I think continuing along those same lines, if we plan for that the coming year, would be an opportunity to showcase that work. Is that, yes, Veronica? Okay, I'm making decisions for the committee.
We were talking about how to make funding more equitable. And specifically, I was talking about how challenging it is for organizations to receive reimbursable grants because it means that you have to be able to have the funds up front. So what kinds of like thinking outside the box opportunities for community funding could be available for either providing that funding up front and then being able to reimburse the community fund back, and just some creative ideas because a lot of times organizations can't access funding because it's not necessarily built in an equitable way.
I was going to add on to that for some, so we had a session and this came up actually a lot. I'm sure you've heard this a lot in the contracting too with grants where people who don't have the money up front usually are the smaller organizations. And so then they're not able to participate. So we've heard this a lot at the state level too. And there's usually a law, I'm assuming the cities have the law and the counties have the law, the state has where you can't give the money up front. So some of the things that were asked were like, could you work with financial institutions or having a revolving loan fund so that somebody else is paying and there's some risk into that, or a way to pay people directly for the services. So like, sharing contractor, like some other ways that the people can still participate at that level. Because a lot of folks were saying that at the state fund, when we had to, a lot of people were like, we can't even compete on some of the work that was coming out of commerce, had a bunch of funds coming out. Like they're like, we can't even participate because we don't have the money up front. But so same stories.
Thank you all for sharing that. Appreciate all of the comments. So this was an excellent conversation, and we really do want to continue it moving forward. And staff also wants to get together and do some diligence with our regional partners to have some conversations so we can come back with some more information for you all. So to wrap up tonight, I think the immediate questions are, can we host another one of these? And if so, when? And would there maybe be a host who might want a jurisdictional host? I know I heard some cities saying maybe. So you don't need to make a decision tonight, but I just wanted to put that up there of things that we'll need to consider for planning the next one. Like I mentioned just a second ago, these conversations are very, very helpful for us to understand and for us to take a look at and fine tune some information so we can bring it back to you as possibilities moving forward. So thank you again for everything tonight. And it looks like we had a comment over here. Question?
I was just gonna put a vote in for quarter 3, because quarter 2, if we were going with the calendar we have now, is the same week as the DEIB summit. So, yeah, September. Exactly, and then so to my mind, it would make sense to do our next thing after that, since so many folks will be participating, putting their energy into the summit.
I think that's an excellent consideration. And can we get some head nods here in the room that looks good of taking a look and a little thumbs up? Okay, we got some thumbs up over here. Okay, all right. Well, like I said, thank you again for all of the conversation tonight, for the updates, for the presentations, for allowing us to bring in some excellent speakers to provide some additional information on Thurston County. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon at a date to be determined. Need to close your meeting out.
I'm just still trying to figure out how I can sign up for Adulting 101. Real quick, I just wanted to thank everybody. Can I just have real quick, we're going to adjourn the meeting, but we have to do this officially because this is City of Lacey business. Real quick, guys, can I just have your attention? Real quick, thanks. Real quick, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming to our Human Services Commission meeting tonight. I know Michelle mentioned that what we do, and we're tasked with a really difficult task, and it's a lot of people apply for grants in need. And last time we had over 20 applicants for $300,000 in funding, and we received far more than that. And so you guys giving us input on what's really needed in the community so that we can get those funds to the right organizations is super helpful. So with that being said, I just wanted to adjourn the meeting at 8. Is that 13? Because I have glasses on. I can't. 8:13. Thank you.